Hi guys, welcome to Learn with W3 Schools, and today we're going to talk about how do you use keys in JavaScript. Okay, in this course we're going to talk about that what exactly we do with the keys and how do we check if a key that we use inside JavaScript really exists or not. So this is one of the going to be the one of the most effective ways to ensure that the key exists in an object or in an inside an array. My name is Dr. Zeeshan Bhatti. This is Learn with W3 Schools. If you are here for the first time, please do subscribe as I post these courses and video lectures on JavaScript and all other programming languages regularly, almost every week. Let's begin. Now, what will you basically learn in this case? Today, we're going to talk about how to check if a key exists in a JavaScript object or an array. Why checking or for undefined is not always accurate. Also, we're also going to see that how JavaScript handles the non-existing keys, the difference between the in operator as well as the has own operator, the most effective technique for a reliable key checking. So lots to talk about. Let's get on with it. So the first thing is basics of key checking. What do we exactly mean by that? The first is the direct access. By accessing a key directly, we returns an undefined if it does not exist. But this isn't reliable when the value of the key is actually undefined itself. Meaning that if I have a constant object, okay, and inside the object I have a key and a value pair. I have a key and a value pair. In this case, the key age has a value itself known as undefined. Okay, it's not blank, it's not undefined, the value itself is undefined. Now if I check the value object, it's going to return undefined to me, direct access. In other words, if I check the object salary, mm, this is also undefined. Now you're gonna ask me, hey, there is no salary here. Exactly, because we're gonna ask the JavaScript to print a value that actually does not exist. It always returns undefined to me. However, if I have a variable that itself contains an undefined, this is where the problem occurs. Both the output contain undefined. Now, how do we know whether the value actually exists or not, or value itself is undefined? Because again, this is perfectly legal statement in JavaScript. That's the use of key checking in JavaScript. So to use the proper methods to avoid this ambiguity, we use the in operator or has own property method. These are two standard ways of ensuring to check whether there is an undefined or whether the value actually does not exist and it's undefined as per JavaScript. So using the in operator. The in operator checks if the key exists in the object, including the inherited properties. For example, we say the key in object. If we look at the code, for example, we have an object, bracket start, bracket close, we define name, Alice, again, age is undefined. Now, this is the value, okay? The value itself is, UE, the value itself is undefined. Said, okay, no problem with that. So if I go inside console.log, what if I call the name in object? So now we are using this in operator here. This in operator here will check if the value, this name, this key actually exists in this object or not. If it does, it's going to return true to us. So this in behaves as a if statement. If this name exists inside the object, return true to us. Similarly, we can say log console.log salary in object, means does this key exist inside object or not. This is going to return false for us. Why? Because there is no salary defined here. This is one standard way of ensuring that our objects and keys are properly understood by the code. By using the in keyword, we can easily check. We can use this inside the if block as well, and we can then process that if the key returns true, then you do the process. Otherwise, just say, hey, this does not exist. That way, we can avoid lots of pitfalls inside the JavaScript. How about the has own property method? The has own property method checks if the key exists direct property of the object. It ignores the inherited properties. So for example, we check object.has property key. So we create a name, we define an under age, which is again undefined with the value. We declare another object, we create an object, and we say create new object. Now this is where the inheritance properties come into play. So we say go inside the object, check has property name. Okay, so this will return true to us. So using the object, this object here, we say dot, go inside this object and has own property, check whether this property exists or not. So if the property exists, this will return true to us. However, if you check object2 has own property called name, this will return false because the inheritance is not there. Even though we have assigned the object to the object here, created a new object, but object 2 contains this object, not its current direct data at the moment. Hence, if you check object 2 has a property name, this will return false for us. Okay, so that's what we mean by checking the ignoring the inheritance. Whereas if you use the in keywords, it will include the inherited property as well. Has on property, in fact it does, has on property will actually ignore it. So it will not check the inherited content, it will only check what exists inside the object, which is object 2, which is actually only the object 1, not its properties. So has on works fine if you are just checking the one direct variable, no problem with that. However, if you are inheriting something and then using this will return false for us. In a normal sense, it works fine. So you use when you want to ignore inherited properties. Okay, that's one key point to remember is you can use in as well as has own property method, but has own property will ignore the inheritance. If there's no inheritance, if you're just directly comparing this thing, then no problem. You can use either one, either in or has. But if there's inheritance, you need to be very specific whether you want to look into the inherited properties or you just want to look into the current object, not the inherited properties. Comparing the in and the has on property. So the in operator checks the key, including the inherited ones, whereas the has on property checks only the object's own keys. So as depending on what use you have and how you have done the coding, if you have an inheritance and you want to check everything, including the inherited properties, then in is the best choice. If you just want to ignore the inherited and want to see, hey, the child object, does that child object have this additional property or not, then you preferably would use has own property methods. The in is slower but has a broader check because it checks your parent, your inherited properties. Has own property is reliable for direct property checks and then makes things much more easier. Okay, so if you look at the code, we have object, we have an object inherited, so we again assign the object here, which is again assigned to this thing. So basically object 2 is inheriting object 1. So if I use name in object 2, it becomes true because the object 2 contains the inherited name parameter. But if I use object 2 has own property called name, this will return false for me because object 2 now with respect to inheritance, this name does not exist. Okay, so that's the major difference that we are talking about. So the one common question that students have been asking me, so I've just tried to put down as a fact. So how do I check if a key exists in the JavaScript object or an array? So we use either in or has property, okay, to check that, not direct access. What if the value is undefined? So use in and has or property again to differentiate between the non-existing keys and the keys with the values undefined. You can easily check whether the value exists or not and then find out that whether it's there or whether the value itself is undefined. So if this returns, either one of them returns true, means the actually value is there, the key is there. That means there must be the value which is again could be undefined. So if a key doesn't exist, it will return false or throw an error. Direct access returns undefined. So if you direct access it, in just like in the first example here, this one. So in this case, objects.salary, it's not defined. It will always refine undefined. This is what we mean by direct access. Okay. So we prefer to check a condition first, whether the key exists or not, and then use it. That way we can always avoid this ambiguity and this pitfall of undefined. Which method is best? Again, it goes in the general sense. Depends if you want to include the inherited properties, go for in. If you just want to follow the direct property, we always go for has own property. Just makes things much more easier and faster. Okay, so best practice for checking the keys: use in for a general checks, including the inheritance. Use has own property for a strict direct property check. Avoid using undefined checks as they are you considered unreliable. For arrays, always verify the index number explicitly. Okay, so these are 4 best practices that we tend to follow. Quick recap: we have the in property, we have it checks inheritance, we have a has on property, it doesn't check inheritance. General key existence, it checks everything. It's a more stricter, checks own properties only. Okay, use these techniques to write better and more reliable code. Choose the right method based on your requirements. So this is the end of the session. I hope you understood the use of keys, how we check them, the in and has method. Okay. So if any other confusion, do let me know in the comments below. And thank you for watching. Please do check out these other cool videos. And if you like them, give a bit like with and write a comment what you didn't like, or what else you want to learn. And still, if you find more interested, please don't forget to share these videos. This is Dr. Zeeshan Bhatti signing off.